So you've probably heard this before. Make America great again. Donald Trump wants to make America great again. MAGA, right? Heard that before sometime, all right. What is it that it means? What does it mean to make America great again? Like make America great again in terms of values, in terms of making more money, in terms of having more, like building more stuff. What is it to you to make America great again? Because it seems like a simple question, yet the answer is obviously not. The answer is certainly not simple. This is what you're seeing now is, well, this is an article. This is from the rest of the world. It's a very good article. I suggest you Google that title there and look it up yourselves. It's worth reading because there's a problem here. Because what some people think MAGA is, others don't. And what some people thought they would want to have MAGA, then realize they don't want a MAGA. They don't want a MAGA anymore. They like wearing the hats, but when it comes down to actually MAGAing, they don't fucking want a MAGA anymore. TSMC is maybe the largest, most powerful microchip company the world has ever seen, created by a revolutionary engineer, trained in the United States, educated in the United States, went back to Taiwan because of government money and sponsoring, and started a flourishing business. He did very, very well. The article is very good. It's about how this Taiwanese dude specialized on making like customized microchips by demand, right? So for Nvidia and a bunch of others, and this is obviously a super successful model. Which it was. This is an article from 2024. This is still going on right now. The problem we'll talk about here, and this was under Joe Biden. Where is there's a photo here of old Joe. There he is walking around. So massive microchip factory in Phoenix. All right. So as you see, the idea is not new. The idea of, okay, let's start making ourselves microchips. Making microchips is kind of like a strategic, important thing you need to do. So it's in Europe as well, in the United States, but it's not as easy as people think, because everyone wants to MAGA until it's time to start MAGAing. And Americans like Bruce here, they don't want a MAGA. Bruce thought he'd landed his dream job. The young American engineer had been eager for a stable, high-paying job in the semiconductor industry. Late 2020, he received a LinkedIn message from recruiting Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company. That's where the initials come from. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, right? Of course. So yeah, everything is great, right? And they go to Taiwan and they get trained because it's a Taiwanese company and they do things the Taiwanese way. Right off the bat, when they go to Taiwan, they like the country, and they don't like how Taiwanese actually work. They do things in a very different way. They work extremely long hours. The level of pressure that these people are used to is not something that Americans want. And that is already, just from that point, they start dropping out. It was so bad that they had to create incentive for staying in the training program, not even working. This has already been delayed. This is right in 2021. It's still not operational. 2021 construction kicked off in Arizona. As of right now, it's still in. I don't know if it's still in construction. I mean, this looks pretty advanced now, but they don't have the people. They don't have the people to work there because. Guess what? Americans don't want to be Taiwanese. And get what? Because this is crazy. Taiwanese don't want to be Americans either. They have the workforce here is Taiwanese. They had to bring on all of those immigrants. Yeah, we were talking about deportation. Well, deport the Taiwanese. You want to deport the Taiwanese working in the semiconductor factory in Arizona, right? We have to deport all of those dirty immigrants. Okay. So you lose your semiconductor business because you need a Taiwanese worker to actually do that. And the American workers are not getting along with the plan. They are not working like Taiwanese. And the Taiwanese are complaining about the American workers. They don't have the culture. They don't have the loyalty. They don't work hard. They don't question enough things, or question too much the things they shouldn't be. So it is not what slave mentality, right, of Taiwanese commentators joke that the company runs on engineers with slave mentalities who sell their lives, right? Americans don't want to work like that. They don't want to work like a Taiwanese employee. And Taiwanese don't like the way Americans work. They like working like they do, but you know what they don't like? They don't like the society. Taiwanese people don't like that there's no public transportation in there. Oh, but you can go and buy. The Taiwanese guy doesn't want to buy a car. He wants to go in a train that actually works and is clean and is there on time and is super cheap, and he hasn't got to worry about driving or insurance or anything. They like to go and have the street vendors that they're used to in Taiwan. They like the nightlife in Taiwan. And Arizona, turns out, is very different from Taiwan. So the Taiwanese employees are not happy over there, and the Americans are not being trained properly to work like Taiwanese, and probably never will. This is already being delayed to 2027. Work gathered for ceremony at TSMC. They have these things where this is like very Japanese, of this ceremony of appreciation for the company and loyalty. And the American is like, okay, let's stop this nonsense. Let's actually get to work. And then when they get to work, is, you know what? You're working me like a damn animal. I will look for something that's more convenient for me. They don't want to do these jobs. Right? It's not just gardening and doing the stuff that Mexicans do. No, they don't want to do the. You know why? And this is nuts. Because Americans like doing the things that Americans like doing. Not what Taiwanese or Mexicans. They like doing things their own way. So I'm not saying it cannot be done. I'm not saying you cannot have a semiconductor factory in Arizona. I'm pretty sure you can. But it's not easy. This started in 2021, and they're already delaying it to 2027 or even 2028. As training went on, tensions mounted. U.S. engineers told the rest of the world that some Taiwanese male engineers had calendars with bikini models on their Imagine how offensive for these wokey trained engineers in American colleges. These are all people that went to college, by the way, and occasionally share sexual memes in group chats. A female American colleague, according to an American trainee who witnessed the conversation, asked the Taiwanese engineer to remove his computer wallpaper depicting a bikini model. One former American engineer said some local co-workers referred to him as a white breeding pig, implying he was only in Taiwan to sleep with local women at a meeting. So these are conflicts that are super understandable, but that's the thing. You're trying to force something into a society that hasn't got to put up with. I'm talking about the American one. The Taiwanese one, they were super appreciative of the opportunities of working their lives off for this semiconductor company. They love the idea, but it's so different. They like the bikini model calendar. They like being a little bit racist towards white people. So you're not compatible on the cultural aspect, on the workplace aspect. And again, could it ever be compatible and fine? I guess it could in some way at some point. Certainly not gonna be easy. How the hell are you convinced, people? You will have to find a way of making semiconductors not the Taiwanese way, but the American way. Now, is there even a way of doing that? Now, do Americans even want to work? Obviously not. Not in this way, not in these conditions. The remaining Americans worker began speculating that the company only hired them to secure CHIPS Act funding, Bruce said, but they stayed on. And you know what? They started getting poor ratings in Glassdoor. The company themselves, TSMC, started getting shitty ratings. And when you get shitty ratings, guess who doesn't want to work in a shitty American company? Americans don't want to work in shitty Taiwanese companies in America. They have a shitty rating in Glassdoor. They work you like an animal. They treat you like shit. They work you like a Taiwanese sweatshop. Guess what? Because it is. That's what you bought. You bought the Taiwanese semiconductor sweatshop. Who are you gonna fill it up with? And then, to cover high living costs, TSMC provided Taiwanese workers with stipend for cars and housing. Some families moved into apartment complexes reserved for employees, dubbed TSMC villages. Local schools introduced Mandarin. Imagine the average MAGA voter realizing that all of a sudden in their Arizona school, they're teaching damn Mandarin because of the immigrants they're bringing in because of making America great again. Do you see how complex things can be at times? How contradictory they can be at times? Visual aids, classroom, a Chinese Baptist church. Oh, but I love Fernando. You don't know what you're talking about. We're super cool. Maybe you are, but the other guy in the pickup truck looking at the Taiwanese family. They go back to your country, you assholes. Imagine the irony. A Chinese Baptist church, Phoenix organized. Oh, and this is, many experience a cultural shock. The bustling cities of Taiwan are densely packed and offer extensive public transport, ubiquitous street food, and 24-hour convenience stores every few blocks. And this is so different. For example, in Europe, this thing of convenient, like 24-hour shit. No, people work up until a certain time, and then they have weekends off, and there's nowhere open on like Sundays. No, people rest on Sundays. Yeah, even the guy working on the shitty job, because he has that famous quality of life that they want to have, right, in the civilized world. So no, you don't have that. Yeah, that's gonna be yet another thing that the Taiwanese guy or even the Americans have a cultural shock when in Europe. That's another video I need to do. 24-hour convenience stores every few blocks. In northern Phoenix, everyday life is impossible without a car. And they don't want to drive. Oh, they don't want to buy a car. They want to go in the little train, the electric train thingy, and not even bother with that. East Asian faces and our scars. Everything is so big in America, said one engineer, recalling his first impression. He recounted his wife summarizing her impressions of the United States. Great mountains, great rivers, and great boredom. It is just too different. They don't have a good time. They don't adapt quickly. Taiwanese engineers brought with them the intense SMC work culture, having spent years under the company's grueling management. They were used to long hours, long days, out-of-hour calls, harsh treatment from their managers. In Taiwan, their pay and prestige were worth it. They told the rest of the world, despite the challenges, many felt proud working for the island's most prominent firm. It was the best job they could hope for, right? And you get treated like shit, and you're happy you're being. It is a different culture. How on earth they're not getting this done ever? Forget about 2028. But the American workers didn't have the same sense of loyalty. In the U.S., engineers had plethora of job options to provide competitive pay and abundant personal time. The Taiwanese workers described their Phoenix colleagues as arrogant, carefree, and more willing to challenge orders. It's hard to get them to do things, a Taiwanese engineer in Phoenix told the rest of the world. So, you see how not everything is as simple as it seems. You see how... Can you make America great again so as to make more stuff in America? Yes, you can. At what cost? But far, far more important, do Americans want to work like that? Do you want to work like Taiwanese people? Or do you want to specialize on maybe things that are the things that Americans specialize on, right? Because I'm not saying no one here works more or less or is better or worse than others. I'm saying we're all different. And when you want to make country into something that is, when you want to make America into China, what you're risking is having yet another ghost town or ghost factory across good old USA. Guys, see you next time. Take care.